Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So I wanted to go ahead and touch on a few bits and pieces of lore that everyone has been talking about recently, and yes, it is lore surrounding the Altar of Reflection, and one particular note that is told to us through it. This is one of the best storytelling devices in all of Witch Queen, and frankly, it alone is something Bungie should be applauded for because of the mechanics surrounding it, and the way it weaves into the story so elegantly, with the simple idea of allowing us to better understand Savathûn. You'll notice that there's no spoiler warning here. That's because this video is releasing a week after the launch of Witch Queen. This channel will now start openly discussing spoilers unless it's around the raid, which we'll be holding off on until the next reset, aka next Tuesday. So be ready for that. We have a lot to discuss, and now the gloves are coming off. So, if we're going to jump into the lore surrounding the Altar of Reflection, we should probably just start with this note. Yes, we're going to address the two truths and two lies situation, but first we need to actually understand how the Altar of Reflection works, and in order to do that, we need to understand Deep Sight. So let's start with all that. When we get onto Savathûn's ship called the Lure in the first campaign mission, we were able to pick up this strange piece of pyramid tech. When we took it back to the relic on Mars, we were able to reforge it into a weapon known as the Enigma. This happened because of an ability that the relic awoke within us, an ability tied to the darkness known as the Deep Sight. You obviously use it a lot in the campaign of Witch Queen, but you might have all missed something of the key points of how it works, so let's go ahead and just really quickly explain this. Thanks to some of the investigations on the investigation board back in the Enclave, we were able to figure out how Deep Sight works somewhat, and we figured out that Deep Sight is an ability that is based in memory and time distortion. You can see this clearly in two ways. Firstly, remember at the very start of the campaign, when we go out onto the deserts and see portions of Mars from the past? That's due to the darkness distortions in the area, which give off the same energy as the relic and the Enigma. This darkness energy is filled with temporal distortions that basically show us visions of the past. Now, think to when you activate a Deep Sight path in the Throne World. When you do that and platforms appear or disappear, it is showing what things were like in the past and is allowing you to interact with that past version of things. This is how you're able to access certain parts of the Throne World, and it makes sense. Consider that Savathûn tore down her Throne World, which was previously made of darkness, and made a new one on top of it that was more fitting to the fixtures of the light. And with all of that said, certain parts of the darkness were always going to have traces underneath, and that means that we're going to see moments at which Deep Sight reveals these strange parts and pieces we can explore within the Throne World. Those are our two examples. This is how Deep Sight works. When certain objects or even individuals are concerned, the visions of the past that you see manifest more strongly on moments of memory that leave behind a potent psychic trace. Using this, we can use Deep Sight in appropriate locations and with appropriate items to peer into the memories of a subject that holds sufficient psychic resonance. That psychic resonance has to be attached to an appropriate object. We know this through the lore book, which I'm not going to go ahead and read today. I'm going to read that in the next one, probably. But yeah, just do know that it does expand on all of this a lot for the time being. Essentially, as long as you have an item that is relevant to a certain character, as long as there is a memory attached and associated with that item, you will be able to take it to a place like the Relic or the Altar of Reflection, and you will be able to discover what was leaving that psychic resonance, that psychic implant of memory. And when you do that, you will then be able to view that memory. This means that certain beings will inadvertently leave behind clues as to what's been going on, allowing us to investigate, and in some instances, it actually means that clues can be manually left behind for us. That is what has been happening a lot with Savathûn. It is in fact the entire reason why we were led to the Altar of Reflection through proxy and various strange moments in the campaign in the first place. This was all part of her plan. Anyway, the Altar of Reflection is specifically a place within the Throne World where all of the Deep Sight's connections and power can be used to view these psychic imprints. And again, it all works out with Savathun's plan. You see, she knew that if she took the light and was chosen to be resurrected as a light bearer, she would be without any of her memories, and so she devised a plan to get her memories back using the power of the deep sight and her clever manipulations of us. In this process, we would have the Enigma delivered to us, thanks to Savathun, who would graciously allow us to take the weapon straight from her ship, the Lure, knowing that we would then be able to craft this into the Enigma, and knowing that our powers of deep sight would be awakened. With this, we would then investigate Savathun's past within her own throne world. Something very convenient for her, seeing that she would be able to view all of the memories that we also saw, all of her memories, and thus she would be able to remember her past life. Something that no Guardian has been able to do with such clarity before, except perhaps for Crow. It does make me wonder if perhaps the deep sight was the ability that Savathun used in order to show Crow his past life as Uldren Sov. If so, this might explain a few things here and there, and it would make sense that she's had access to the deep sight before, given that she has close ties to darkness. In the process of understanding both the Enigma and the Altar of Reflection a little bit more, we're given the opportunity to investigate further. This is all after the campaign has concluded. So, as a result, we venture to the Rupture, where an opening to the Altar of Reflection can be found. From here, we're greeted with the all-too-familiar voice of the Witch Queen. She's telling us something intriguing. Take a listen to this.
Welcome back, honored guest. Surprised to hear from me? It was always a possibility that your cunning would defeat mine. That you would win, and I would lose. And so I knew I would need a way to reach you, even after death. To set the record straight. I couldn't believe so many mysteries still unsolved. In these hallways, my memory lives on. Here, I left you all the answers you crave. Bring your curiosities to me. Let me tell you some stories.
Savathun does not live, not until her ghost Imaru has a chance and a good enough reason to revive her. But the Witch Queen was always one to leave contingencies behind. After all, she is the Hive God of Cunning, and there is no way in which she wouldn't leave herself a hand to play that was at least somewhat advantageous to her cause. I think it's fair to ask a question as to whether this information is trustworthy, and for the moment, even with the notes made in the lore book that all of the memories themselves are credible, I personally don't know if we can trust all the information we obtain from the altar and Savathun's memories. They, at worst, might be valuable, but at best, they might be credible, and as a result, we're going to go ahead and talk about everything that Savathun tells us from the Altar of Reflection after her death. First, we examine the glaive and the technology from which it was crafted. Savathun has this to say.
The children of the Witness wage a war. It spans centuries and galaxies. They see the fall of thousands of civilizations, the silencing of millions of thoughts. In the mind of one of these warriors lives the memory of an ancient weapon, a blade that cuts with the shining edge of beautiful, terrible logic. Through a game of riddles, I steal this memory for myself. I make the weapon mine, but I do not keep it. I use it as a lure.
I already explained Savathun's plan, but it's revealed to us in a little more detail there. She knew that this weapon, a powerful weapon, was a lure for a Guardian in particular, and she knew that a Guardian capable of infiltrating her ship and her throne world would ultimately be able to reach all of the different clues of memory that Savathun needed them to reach in order to regain all of her memories. Immaru, in the front-facing part of things, was putting up a valiant effort to put on a face that would show aggressively, something that would help to hide the Witch Queen's illusion. Savathun wanted us there in the throne world. She wanted us to gather the various items that she had hidden, whether it was Sigira's ghost shell, or the tablets of ruin, or even the crystal shard that was lodged within her leg, something that she had on her when she was eventually turned to the light after her death. This is something that Savathun very much planned out for the most part. This is a moment at which we need to consider very carefully the cunning of the Witch Queen once again. Seriously. Planning all of this out, understanding the deep mechanics, and not only anticipating that we would need to be drawn into a trap like this with a false sense of security, but also committing Immaru to essentially run counter to that operation is quite something. A significant logistical feat, and perhaps more importantly, something that is completely appropriate for Savathun. But now we come to some more revelations, and it's here that I think we need to point something out. I believe that the items we can scan or analyze at the Altar of Reflection will be changed every week. And the reason I say this is because we start this week with the Tablets of Ruin, something that we can investigate 4 times before the Altar of Reflection is done with us and spits us back out. And this is something that's really quite important to acknowledge, because ultimately this means that we have more to hear from the Altars of Reflection, and also there is more knowledge to be gleaned from Savathun. She's left these tidbits behind specifically for us, and whether that's to our detriment or, as she says, to set the record straight, I think it's important to hear these. So, let's go ahead and jump into the one that everyone has been talking about. When you first investigate the Tablets of Ruin, you hear this.
Shall we play a game? 2 lies, 2 truths. Mercury, Io, and Titan are in my care. The Witness returned Mars to your solar system. The power to move worlds will soon be yours. The Taken King will rise again. You Guardians are so clever. Tell me, what is true? And what is false?
Now, before we go ahead and talk a little bit more about which of these is lies and which of these is truth, I want to go ahead and take into account all the things that are said here at the Altar of Reflection regarding the Tablets of Ruin and everything that's attached to that memory. It is important, and it does provide some of the answers. So, here are the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th recordings from the Altar of Reflection.
It was thrilling to find a riddle that Oryx had missed. But of course, his cunning could never defeat mine. Do you know the last time I spoke with my brother? It was just before you killed him. I told him he would die, and he said, "I am always glad to die." I know what you're wondering. Why did Mars reappear? The Witness stole your planets and moons with a power from the deep. The power to move worlds from one place to another. So why has Mars returned while the others are still absent? And where are your lost friends? I asked you before. Why did Mars return? This is the truth. The Witness never took Mars. I did. The Witness wished to take it, yes. But I acted first. I wanted to protect it, just as I wanted to protect your Traveler. And when it was safe, I returned it to you. As for the others, well, I suppose you should have thought twice before killing me.
So, first of all, I think we should all know that even in death there are reasons for Savathun to lie. So, take everything again that she says with a pinch of salt, a sizable one at that, including the series of things about 2 lies and 2 truths. To unpack that, it could all be misdirection, and ultimately there might not be any point as to speculating what is and isn't true. But for the sake of such speculation and what it might do to expand our potential knowledge base, let's go ahead and unpack things. It's unwise to take the Witch Queen at her word, but maybe this is a moment at which we don't need to worry so much now that she's dead. Maybe. Let's see if those words come back to bite me. Anyway, let's go to that first thing. Statement by statement, we'll roll on. Firstly, we had the statement, Mercury, Io, and Titan are in my care. If we're to believe what Savathun states later on, then this first statement is potentially true. Savathun implies that she could have returned these other worlds to us given that she was the one who had stolen them away using the power of the deep. Now that she is dead, it's something that she implies she can't do. The sentence essentially bemoans the fact that she can't do this because of the fact that we killed her. Secondly, the Witness returned Mars to your solar system. If we're to believe Savathun again, then this is false according to her own direct testimony, and would make some sense given the appearance of the relic, which she could have placed as a means of helping us awaken our deep sight. The links that the relic's site might have to the creation via the Witness are something poorly explored, and it's not fair to say that the Witness absolutely did create this relic site. It's really not clear, although it is something that we have to consider given that it's an artifact of darkness, so don't count this falsehood as definitive. Simply remember that tentatively we can call this falsehood if Savathun is being honest with us. Thirdly and fourthly, the power to move worlds will soon be yours, and the Taken King shall rise again. These two are up for debate. Now, the final of these statements about Oryx coming back is going to seriously have people up in arms with a degree of joy, given the great degree of love for Oryx's character in Destiny's community. However, I'm going to go ahead and say that I don't know definitively what to make of this one. You see, Oryx is probably returning to the game, given that Bungie has said that there'll be another Destiny 1 Classic raid coming to D2 out of the Destiny content vault. This is supposed to be a themed raid that fits the manner of the expansion at the time, which is Witch Queen of course, and they've also stated that the other Hive raid, Crota's End, is probably a little bit too small and closer to a dungeon for players to consider it a raid at this point. So, unless all of a sudden the season that this arrives with turns out to be a massive Siva-esque season where it turns out that the darkness was Siva all along, I think it's fair to say that Oryx will be returning as a raid boss in the newly revamped King's Fall. However, something key to note about this is Bungie's approach to the Vault of Glass and many of the returning strikes, which is this. They see strikes and raids as moments frozen in time, and if I'm remembering that quote correctly, this also means that the context of these strikes being brought back is to fit with the theme of the current times, and is not to imply that those activities are being conducted at the time of that season. This is one of those reasons why we still have strikes in the game which have Cayde 6 in them, which, I mean, he's been dead for years now, so, you know, that sucks. But the whole point is, you still also have this same logic being applied to moments like the Devil's Lair and Saber 2, strikes that have been brought back with unedited dialogue. In fact, there is an exception to this rule, but it's an exception that proves the rule, and that exception is Navota, the new stand-in for Omnigul, which was a Destiny 1 strike which has been converted into a new and somewhat revamped Destiny 2 strike. And the reason for this is purely because of the fact that it ties into the new light quest for Destiny 2. So as a result, you're looking at something completely different. I think it's worth saying that this one therefore is up in the air, and we shouldn't be sure if this is a lie, or if this is Bungie hinting, with Savathun's words here, to a return of the King's Fall raid. It could alternatively be some kind of reference to somehow someone trying to bring Oryx back, though how you'd manage that I have no idea. The old rituals that were used in the Books of Sorrow probably don't work on a 7-year-old crystallized corpse that's now floating somewhere in the depths of Saturn at this point. And furthermore, I don't think that you can resurrect Oryx without his worm. And there's the question of what happens when you have the touch of malice in the picture. It's really not clear if that's something that affects this. Now, as for the other statement, the power to move worlds will soon be yours, this is a far more fascinating statement in my opinion. This is knowledge stolen from the deep by Savathun, this ability to move worlds, and if we're going to learn this at some point, it represents a significant improvement in our degrees of power. We have gone from being paracausal and capable of changing the scape and scope of a battlefield, to paracausal to a degree that allows us to move worlds, literally. This would be a lethal leg up on the Witness, and it might even be a way that we could start to approach their level of power. The way that this all works and the links between the Witness and the past as revealed through Deepsight makes me wonder if this is a hint to something. Makes me wonder if the power of the Deepsight and this ability to move worlds is in fact the building blocks of a new Darkness subclass in the future. One that is based around the distortion of time and gravity. One that we might eventually acquire in either Lightfall or in the final shape. That is all to be seen, and it's very much not clear if that's the case. Overall, however, this means that we still can't pin the tail on whether this one is true or false. So, for the time being, that is left ambiguous. Overall, the Altar of Reflection is fascinating, and there's a whole lot of lore entries out there within an entire lore book that we're going to be covering with them as time goes on. Just so you know, I'm almost certain that the altar is not something that we'll be visiting just one more time. I think we're going to be visiting the altar at least 2 more times, and from there we have amazing story details that we can extrapolate. I, for one, really would like to see what happens more with Sagira's ghost. I would love to see if there's anything more to learn from the Worm familiar, and I would love to see if the Crystal Shard has something more than it can yield, although the original indication from the lore book thus far sort of says that that's probably not the case. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really want more Destiny content, go ahead and hit subscribe, and the email notifications next to the subscribe button. It's the bell. Remember, of course, however, that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Perodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.